This is the Global Podcast Network, where executives and professionals connect, share, and inspire. Stay tuned for the conversations that drive success.
Well, in many of our worlds, in the past month and at present, doing some spring cleaning, within our homes, getting rid of some junk, just, kind of purging. It's that time of the year. The same applies to your business. Have you thought about that? Maybe cleaning up the operations of your business, maybe some of the ways you do things, maybe tightening things up a little bit. We're going to talk about that today, specifically with the eye on small businesses. And this is all of what he offers in many different areas in terms of business consulting, professional coaching, personal coaching. And I believe we're going to learn a lot. I own a small business. I'm afraid to even talk to this gentleman because he is the mirror for most of us, the things that we ignore. Davonte Williams is on the program. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me back.
Yeah, I'm really curious. And I do struggle. I do marketing, so I do struggle with the process. And I'm going to share with you that I don't do a New Year's resolution. I have a New Year's word. And my word this year, before I even get to that, other years have been resilience. Last year it was discovery, discovering things about myself, but also, business and all of that. This year, the word is execution, execution.
Mm.
And I find myself, and maybe this echoes other small business owners, and maybe this gets us into further into the topic, but things just taking too long. I mean, I started a project in October. We're not even done yet. It should have taken like a month and a half. Granted, who I'm working with is out of state, has to come here and I get it. And there was another project out there working on. And it's just like, I feel like quicksand, like execute, move, get it done, get it done. And not, calm, conquer, and move on, but just move it forward. Are you hearing that from others? Am I the only one that's feeling this right now?
Oh, no, definitely not. That narrative is common. That experience is common where you have the idea, you've ideated, you've talked about it, you've had meeting upon meeting about what you're going to do. But when it comes to making sure that it actually happens, that's where things can kind of fall apart. That's where the timelines, if they're not really laid out, you get bottlenecked or you get stuck waiting on some piece that should have gone through, but we didn't account for X, Y, and Z, and now the whole thing is on hold for, you know, who knows how long.
And there's many different aspects why that can happen. One would be overthinking. Another would be not a proper timeline. Things happen and come up. I get that. Squirrel brain. You're working on one thing. Oh wait, we do this here, we do this here, and then which
Hmm.
which kind of happened in the project I'm referring to. Um, and that's all good because it's great having new ideas, but then it just delays the progress. How do you, let's say, timeline for a project, blueprint, got an idea, going to execute it. How do you leave latitude for other ideas that come up where you don't want to get off the track, so to speak?
Well, it can be a lot of different things. I think that part of the advantage of having an operations expert or strategist is creating contingency. I
Mm,
think that within this space, we've seen it all. We've seen the timelines, the vendors, the supply chains fall apart, and we know that if you bank too much on this one thing needing to happen in this specific way, you're kind of setting yourself up for failure in certain ways. And so we try to create extra avenues and extra paths where if X doesn't work, we'll go to Y. If A able to do this, then we'll go to supplier B or whatever the case may be. So it's building in space and flexibility and leveraging the experience that we have in the operations world to build around the many unseen problems that are maybe common to us, but not so top of mind for people that are focusing on the real important work on coming up with the initiatives and coming up with the big ideas. It's not beneficial for them to focus so much on the small things. So sometimes it's also just an issue of delegation, finding people you trust to handle the small stuff so that you can focus on the big stuff.
And I guess it's also a product of you're deep in the trenches. You know, when you're the small business owner, you don't see everything around you at that time, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's sometimes you're getting a top-down view, or sometimes you operate opposite, the opposite way, where we have some small businesses, whether it's a solopreneur where it's just them or maybe a couple of other people, or it's a larger team where they're so ingrained in the process, they're so entrenched in the way that they've done things. It's
Mm,
very much a if it's not broke, no need to fix kind of mentality. And it's nothing necessarily wrong with that, but it does prevent you from scaling up. It does prevent you from growth. It does prevent you from delegating and moving tasks onto the other people that you've built this relationship that you trust, that you want to give more to them and take off of your plate so that you can either focus on building up and scaling up your business or even just getting some of your time back. You know, a lot of people go into business because they want the freedom, the flexibility, a little bit of their social and family life back. And sometimes that doesn't really happen that way.
when you're a small business owner and you're thinking that things need to get tightened up, cleaned up a little bit, what's your process for doing that when you start with somebody?
I think it's I like to build and leverage organic relationships when I'm looking for these businesses. So I'm almost a little bit picky on who I'm working with and who is a good fit because I want to make sure that I have something to offer. And I also want to make sure that the person that I'm working with is receptive to implementing the change that needs to happen in order to achieve what they want to achieve. But it's usually a pretty in-depth and involved discovery process. Will take days, will take weeks, months if it really warrants it to look at the process and to walk through things together and to say, this is how I'm doing this, this is how I'm making the schedule, this is how I'm communicating for these suppliers. And we'll see, like, all right, well, you're making a schedule, but you're doing it yourself in Excel and it takes you 3 hours every day. That's a pretty clear point of improvement. Let's get you software. Let's delegate this to someone else. Let's try to see how we can automate as much of this as possible. So it's
Mm.
really involved discovery work with you, with your team to see what you're doing, how you're doing it, and what we can do to improve any of those processes.
Would you say that most small businesses, maybe all of them, need to clean up a little bit?
I could say, yeah, probably in some area, no one's perfect, and sometimes it's just not warranted. Yes, we want to try to be as efficient and clean and organized as possible, but depending on what your priorities are, maybe it's just very, very low, and maybe it's fine for now, but it's something that we should want to clean up later on. I think that as a rule of thumb, the way that I like to operate and the way that I like to create my deliverables is in a way that anyone from anywhere with any moderate amount of experience and background can pick something up and understand what's going on. You don't have to be an operations expert to pick up an SOP, a brand new standard operating procedure, and see, like, okay, this generally makes sense. I can see that we're doing X because it's relying on B because, it should be rather intuitive and self-explanatory. And I think that the more that you transition into having all of your documentation in that kind of format, the better positioned you are for really to take on opportunities. When that big contract comes up, when that new partner comes around, you don't have to spend so much time cleaning up. You have it already, you're ready to go, and you can jump into those really life-changing opportunities.
Do you feel that a lot of companies, big and small, haven't really defined who they are? Like the employees that work in there, we have the goal, we're making money and et cetera, et cetera. I'm going back to fundamentals here, but it hasn't really been defined what we stand for, our values in this company, what's important, and a mission statement. Just a
Mhm.
solid. You've seen. Have you seen that where it hasn't even been defined what they're all about?
Yeah, and I think that most businesses actually do have that in some form. If you ask these owners what their values are and what it is they're trying to present and what it is they're trying to bring out into the world, they have a very clear picture of what that is, but it's not written anywhere. You can't find
Yes.
it on the website. You
Yeah.
can't, yeah, it's just kind of in their head. And that's part of the work is just helping taking everything that these founders and CEOs and these leaders in these companies know intuitively and putting it out onto paper or a resource so that it's clear for everyone to see.
I'll bet you it would be an epiphany for many employees to know what the company stands for and what they're about and get them in that mindset, the same mindset as the owner. Um, yes, I've worked at many places. I know what the goal was, but fundamentally, I was at the company for decades. I don't know. I'm afraid to admit it, have an idea, but I never saw anything, even if a company handbook, I don't know, nothing. I got nothing for you. Now that I'm thinking
Yeah,
back, I'm scanning back in my brain. Kind of weird. Kind of weird. Let me think about it.
yeah. Yeah,
Hmm.
and sometimes it's something that needs to be updated and there needs to be a realignment where,
Hmm.
we made this mission statement 30 years ago. Is this still what we stand for today, or
Yeah.
do we need to change it, expand it a little bit?
Yeah. Maybe they're more philanthropic. Yeah, you never know. Maybe that, we've got an eye on more on charity, community involvement than we did maybe 25 years ago, whatever it might be. Let's talk about the tech world and what's going on in terms of tech companies hiring people. It's speeding up pretty fast now, isn't it?
It's an interesting space to be in. It's a little chaotic. It's in flux. In general, we've seen trends where if you're in a technical role at some of these big tech companies where you're a software developer or a scrum master or product manager, um, some people are doing really well. Some people are seeing a lot of opportunity and a lot of growth, but we've also been seeing intermittent layoffs all over the place where it's so egregious where they'll hire dozens, hundreds of people, and then within a quarter or two or within the year, they've already been laid off after a big project and they're looking for something else. So there is still room to grow. It is still a really hot market to be in and in a really large space for opportunity, but it's very unstable at the moment. And so part of what I've been noticing and pushing people towards is positioning themselves to avoid a little bit of that instability, where if full-time employment is not what is happening right now for these positions, maybe it's becoming a contractor. And from what we've seen since 2018, I think contracted positions in tech companies have gone up about 90%. And that
Hmm.
trend only seems to be continuing, where it's a lot easier for these spaces to hire a contractor for a project. Maybe it's a 6 month project, maybe it's a year-long project, maybe it's only a couple of months, but it is still solid work. And it's about managing your expectations too, so that when you go into these positions, you're not making life changes and decisions that may come back to bite you later on when you get laid off after a couple of months or within the year.
Hmm. Is this more of a, when we say being contracted, almost like I'm going to, loosely put this, like Fiverr, you know, things like where people are just looking out that way to hire as opposed to, and by the way, I poke around, I check it out, kind of blown away that you can find
Mhm.
everything and some really, really, really talented people where even if I looked say 5 years ago, I might not see the same quality as I'm seeing now. It's a big difference. It's a big difference. And I guess that's in line with what we're talking about here.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Tools like Fiverr, Upwork, and some of these other gig platforms. I think that the kind of thought process is that that's something for artists voice actors and kind of
Yes.
like freelance, traditionally freelance positions. And there still is a lot of that. It still is a great space to be that kind of professional.
Sure.
But there are also a lot of admin positions and operations positions and positions that aren't so flashy and that you wouldn't really think somebody would contract out for a project or for this or that, but it's out there. I've seen projects where people are asking for someone to create onboarding documentation for a bookstore, or they're trying to clean up their SOPs for a pizza shop, or everything in between. So there is opportunity for small project work, and we are seeing more people that, and myself included, where I check Upwork every now and again if I find a good project, and I'll send in a proposal, show them my work, and if it's a good fit, we'll work on creating onboarding presentation documentation or something small and contained. And it's a really good way to build up your own business, because the more work you have, the more samples and demonstration and experience you have. That is all going to help you out when you leverage that towards getting that next gig and that next project.
Yeah, and I wasn't just referring to those sites, but it's kind of what's going on in terms of, contracting those people out, whether it's for a project, period of time, or whatever. It's almost as, somebody said, yeah, I know a guy, thousands,
Hmm.
because you just go there. And even things like telemarketers, cold callers in some niches, it works. It still works very well. Um, you can get them from there. I mean, it's almost endless where you can hire. But do you really feel that a lot of tech companies are gravitating toward vendors, toward contractors, as opposed to hiring in-house and bringing people in?
I think so. I think that this may be subject to change. It is a pretty chaotic space right now, and it's hard to say with certainty what is going to happen. I don't even think they know what's going to happen to some degree. But the hiring process for especially higher level positions, when you're looking for a mid-level or senior level software developer, that takes months, and it's a rigorous process. You need to really see how that person works, what they worked on, what their ability is.
Yeah.
And it's a much harder, less straightforward position to hire for. And so if you have somebody that has an LLC, or is a solopreneur and has a website and a clean portfolio, it's a lot easier as a recruiter or hiring manager to say, hey, let's hire this person for a couple of months rather than spend 6 months trying to hire a long-term person who may just leave after a few months when they find something better.
Mm. Yeah, that is a great point. I believe there's no loyalty now when companies, you could be there for a decade, two. You can be gone tomorrow. It's not like it was
Mm-hmm.
way, way, way back in the day. And I guess it also works the other way. You could be the employee and say, "Yeah, I'm just gonna, I'm gonna ride this wave out for a little bit, and maybe I'll stay, but maybe I won't. I don't know. I'll have to kind of feel it out." And a challenge for the company. Now they got to find somebody else. Whereby, if it was a vendor, that's expected. It's a
Mm-hmm.
per sort of a per project kind of situation. What's your personal passion when you work with a company and you do many different things from consulting, coaching, all of that? What's kind of your personal love? You'll do it all in that wheelhouse, but I got to believe there's a few things there that I like this and I like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I have my own ideal person company that I like to work for. I really thrive with the small businesses that have just been working hard, putting in the work, building relationships, people and entities that have become leaders in their community, where they might not have big marketing, they might not have the cleanest website, but if you walk around, you ask anyone, you go to this conference, this networking event, and you say, I need a guy for this, or I need a guy for that, everyone's going to sing your praises and tell you, this is the guy that does this. This is the guy that mows your lawn, that does everything the best, or whatever it is. And that's a really rewarding kind of person to work with.
Do you feel that a lot of companies, businesses, individuals aren't the experts. They're not known for what they do. And that's why maybe they don't get hired and they don't get the business. Super serving that one calls the niche where,
Mm.
you know, this that insurance guy over there, that's the go-to, man. I met him somewhere. He knows his stuff. People say he's great. That I need insurance. I'm going to him. Do you find that a lot of companies have identity crisis and they really haven't pushed it as far as they can, and even individuals?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that that really is what I try to push people to strive for, is to be that guy, to be the one that you recommend. Like everyone that I've talked to, when they ask for a tax guy or a CPA or whatever it is, it's very rarely off of a website or a Google search or something. It's a direct recommendation with somebody that they worked with,
Right.
and positioning yourself into that position. Really, I think what it is it takes time and it takes effort and it takes work. And it's very difficult to leverage yourself and present yourself in that way. But a lot of small businesses do it naturally. They just need a little bit of a push, a little bit of direction, a little structure to really solidify themselves in that space.
Yeah, it does take work. It really does. Even if you're networking, you don't just show up and get business. You have to cultivate the relationships. You have to recommend other people so they can recommend you. It is a process, but I believe a necessary one if you want to survive in many of the different areas. How does somebody connect with you? They have a small business. They're feeling that things are kind of a mess, and maybe they need to clean things up. Maybe get some clarity, get a view from somebody else like yourself. How does that all work?
They can reach out on my website, kindpyre.com, Kindpyre. Look at our services. There's a contact form there, or reach out to me directly on LinkedIn, Davonte Williams. Send me a message. We just want to have a chat and even just talk through. I don't really believe in charging for every little bit and piece. If you just need some advice or even some assurance, reach out. Let's have a conversation.
I've asked you before. I'm going to ask you again. I want people to know Kind Pyre, the name of your company. Where did that come from? What does that mean?
It's comes from the idea of like a funeral pyre, like a rebirth, coming into something new, coming in fresh and revitalized, with still the identity of what you were, but now with this new identity into something new.
Good.
So leading with compassion into rebirth, into something new. That's what we're looking for.
Kind Pyre, compassion, rebirth. That's what I'm getting. And by the way, I love the
Yes.
word kind. I do a radio show. I play music, been doing that forever. And I end every show with be kind to yourself and others. I don't think we are enough. And kind resonates. And that's what you are too. Thank you very much for being here today, Demonte. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
We'll be right back.
This is the Global Podcast Network, where executives and professionals connect, share, and inspire. Stay tuned for the conversations that drive success.